Hey, what up, Long Beach? Welcome back to another episode of Long Beach Sports Talk, the only place to talk about local sports right here, brought to you by the Gazette and Press-Telegram newspapers. We are, as always, well, I guess really not as always, it's just becoming a tradition right now, the four horsemen of the local sport apocalypse. I am JJ Fiddler to my right.
I am Mike Gardavasio, and holding in a non-speaking role in today's production, hopefully non-speaking, my infant son Vincent. Oh, I never noticed that rhyme till just now. And to my right,
Tyler Hendrickson. Strangers ain't come down from Rocky Top, reckon they never will. And it's worth mentioning, if you want to get in touch with us, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever else you want to get in touch with us. Find us on YouTube. Gazette Sports is the name of the channel. There's so much content that we give you and interaction that you can have with us. We're cool people. We're nice. Be socially friendly.
and it's all free, but if you'd like to pay for it,
oh, you know you want to pay
you absolutely have that option. If you'd like to receive the press telegram every day at your on your doorstep or your, well, whatever you've got in front of your house, you can go to the press telegram website, go to the subscribe button, call that number, tell them you want the $52 for the entire year, 7-day-a-week service. You can also, if you want to keep getting it for free, which we understand, go to GazetteSports.com, put your name into our email subscription list, and every morning you'll wake up with the digital edition of all of yesterday's stories right in your email inbox.
This is a great time to be a sports fan. It's my favorite time, October. You've got football, you've got baseball playoffs, you've got the other winter sports coming right around the corner. We're going to be talking about some of that. We'll also talk a little bit about the Wilson Bruins winning some sports you might not pay attention to, and we'll also break down with some exclusive info and content the story everyone's talking about from the Wilson football team and the Milliken football team in the aftermath of what happened on Friday night at Wilson's homecoming. All of that and more. Another episode of Long Beach Sports Talk, chock full of local sports. Stick around. Listen, the stories of the Moore League football demise may have been exaggerated by some, but you cannot argue with the state of the local football league, and yet again this weekend was full of, well, black eyes, really, for the local football scene. And we're going to start at the beginning of this story, and you may already know all of the details, but we've got some extra stuff for you. So, first of all, Wilson homecoming, Friday night, hosting Milliken. Huge game in the Moore League, we have to say. I mean, winner of that game.
It ended up being the biggest game of the week, yeah.
And it puts the winner of that game in the driver's seat for that third, maybe even a run at second place. And that could be a home playoff game, theoretically. So it's a big game, right? So Wilson getting their quarterback, Jason Bonney, back. Obviously a big leader on that team.
And they had their Bonney to them.
Exactly. And you've got that kid coming back after missing a month with a concussion. You know, that's a big deal. So just thick with storylines. Wilson goes out to a 14-0 lead. Maybe a little bit of a surprise to some, but Bonnie's back. You know, they get a trick play early on. So it's a big lead for them.
Classic Wilson in a big game. We're going to do the big play before you can do the trick play, and it paid off.
Yeah, visions of Mario Morales play calling dancing in people's heads. Yeah. And so they go out to the 14-0 lead. Milliken gets back in the game with, first, a 15-play, 8-minute drive before the half. And then on the first play of the second half, a blown coverage leads to a 70-plus yard touchdown pass. The only completion of the game, not counting the 2-point conversion later in the game that we'll get to. Yeah. So that's how weird it was just to get to 14-14. And then Wilson takes a 16-14 lead on a safety, followed by a 71-yard touchdown run that really wasn't a touchdown run because he stepped out of bounds, and then they're back up. So that's just like the basis of this game.
There was a full moon on Friday. You know what I mean? Like, nothing more really needs to be said. It was a weird game. And even like I recorded that highlight with you, I still don't remember about half of what you just said. It just seems like it was all sort of made up.
It was a little fantastical.
It was a crazy game, and seeing the highlights just, you couldn't really believe it. It was a heck of just back and forth, momentum swings, big plays, long drives. I mean, what more can you ask for?
I've actually broke down the 5 plays that decided this thing needed to go to overtime instead of just explaining what happened in overtime. It's the front page cover feature on the Gazette this week. So today's Thursday. It's on the local Gazette newsstands. Pick that up. It's for free.
Well, and I'd just like to say I thought you did a great job with that. We usually do that every year for Poly Lakewood, which is worth noting was a 39-0 game that for the first time, really is not really worth talking about on this show. But I thought you did a great job taking that and putting it on a game that, because it was so close, really did deserve that kind of treatment.
Yeah, thank you, and I love doing that.
Yeah.
I love going back and breaking down film and seeing what people were really doing, because when you watch it the first time, you're kind of just watching the ball.
You're just trying to take everything in.
A lot of things happen in high school that are away from the ball. So in the overtime period, Milliken scores first. They kick their extra point. Wilson then follows that up with the score, but they miss their extra point. Pandemonium on the field. Huge win for Milliken. I know we've talked about this football program before and how after the departure of Kirk Diego, well, actually the end of Kirk Diego's tenure there and then into the next era was a very, very rough go for the Rams. And it seems like this year, finally, they're catching tread on their tire a little bit and getting going. So obviously you know how big that game was for them. And it was a capacity crowd on both sides. So that place was electric at that point.
Well, and let's note, Milliken has not lost a Moore League game on the field this season. So, I mean, they had to forfeit the game against Compton, but they have won every time they've gone out in the Moore League so far, which is obviously what puts them in the playoff hunt. Yep. And it's been an amazing turnaround for a team that didn't win a game last year.
Right, yeah, no, absolutely.
So then, during the post-game handshake, we go here to the second phase of our story.
Which, by the way, we talked about 2 weeks ago on this show.
Interestingly enough,
about the dangers of the post-game handshake.
Well, Kentucky decided to not make post-game handshakes necessary, so coaches are doing different things to get around that out there in Kentucky. And yeah, we did have that conversation. And I think we came on different sides of it. And I think this issue, basically just showed up at our front doorstep this week.
Yeah, it's not worth.
We were a little early on it.
It's not worth revisiting the value of post-game handshakes or whatever. But obviously, what happened during that handshake is certainly the story of the week in terms of what people are talking about.
Exactly. We will not be mentioning names or numbers, but we know what happened and we saw what happened. One kid says something, another kid pushes him in the back. As most melees start, or melee, however you'd like to say it.
Melee.
Unless it's the greatest beer throw of all time into the lap of Ron Artest, most of them start with a shove here, a shove there. People get involved who shouldn't be involved.
Someone's got to put a match to the powder keg.
And then next thing you know.
And you mentioned, just in us talking about the game afterwards, because obviously I wasn't there, it was a powder keg, right? I mean, there were so many plays that really should have probably been unsportsmanlike conducts or personal fouls. A lot of stuff was let go. And it was sort of brewing, so then someone shoved someone in the handshake line, and that was the match to the powder keg.
Exactly, and from there, you can definitely see in the video a lot of kids moving away from the situation, but then you can also see a lot of kids going out of their way to get into the situation, and slowly it was diffused with basically positioning of adults, as most fights should be diffused, where they just get in the way of what's happening instead of actually pushing or shoving or anything like that. One kid from Milliken was injured during the fight, and he was actually treated by paramedics on the field after the field had been cleared. Wilson immediately took their kids to the locker room. Milliken moved their kids to the end zone, and then with a police escort actually took them out. Unfortunately, the violence moved into the parking lot. There was a couple fights out in the parking lot that had to be broken up by some police and campus security. So it was just an ugly scene, I think is the best way to explain the second part of this story. It was ugly.
Well, and unfortunately, it was not just contained to that game, and it was just not contained to this city. It seems like, and you don't want to say that it's a growing problem. You don't want to have that be a thing, but we've seen other schools that have had to deal with this sometimes during the game or whether it's during the post-game handshake. And I don't know what is causing this. Why are people fighting at games? Where's the love? Where's the sportsmanship? Where's the control within these programs?
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think it's our job to point fingers, but there are certainly plenty of fingers to be pointed. To some extent, these kids aren't most of them adults yet. But when you're 16 or 17 years old, you have to be able to take responsibility and say, well, we're not going to fight people on a football field. Obviously, I think anytime something like this happens, you have to point to leadership problems, certainly within coaching or administration. And that actually, to me, was the most refreshing thing about this story. The only refreshing thing about this story is that Wilson has sort of chosen to get out ahead of it and make what I think is kind of an important statement, actually.
Yeah, we broke the news on the Gazette website and then the next morning in the Press Telegram on Monday night / Tuesday morning that Wilson had decided to forfeit their next game, that's this Friday, at Compton in an effort to make this, quote, make it a teachable moment, and also to punish the kids. And that's from the mouth of John Jansen, the head coach, and also the principal over there, Sandy Blazer, who both decided this after a day of meeting with administration and interviewing players and then actually meeting with the team, that this is not the way we want to represent the school. Therefore, we're going to make a very large gesture and a very large act.
Well, and I think it's an important one. I think we've seen, actually, this your story about that actually got picked up by one of our sister papers, the San Gabriel Valley Tribune. Their prep guy over there, Fred Robledo, who we love. He pointed out they had a huge fight between Diamond Bar and Diamond Ranch up there last Friday, and actually so many players got suspended as a result of it that they're forfeiting on Friday because they don't have enough players, right? Because that's how many people were suspended. We haven't gotten to that round yet of who's going to be suspended as a result of this, for either team. But it is worth noting, Fred did a blog and question, has Wilson set the standard? Is this something that every school should now be doing? Because Wilson essentially said, and their principal said, look, this isn't what high school football is about, and we need to send a strong message about that. To me, not casting any stones at Milliken or anything, but when a school takes leadership and does that, I do think it sort of sets a standard to where everyone else is now, if you don't forfeit after you get into a fight like that, you're the team that decided not to do that.
Now, there are other factors at hand. One, it's at Wilson. If that thing's at Milliken and it's the same exact situation, maybe it happens a little bit differently.
Right.
Two, this is the second time Wilson has been involved in on-field violence. In Week 3 against Tustin, a few kids got into a fight, and actually a few of them left the sideline, which is an automatic suspension for the next game. So they've already had to deal with this, and I think Jansen made a good point where he said, I thought we had gotten through. Obviously after a situation like that against Tustin, you have a team meeting, you talk about controlling emotions and stuff like that, and obviously they didn't learn. So, when you discipline someone and it doesn't come through, you come back with a stronger discipline the next time.
So I think it is worth noting that the team kind of got their second chance, right? Because they had this problem against Tustin.
Yes.
And it was dealt with in a way that seemed like it was going to work, and it obviously did not work. And this is a difficult decision to make, obviously, because we focus on the sports side of things, and this game obviously matters for Wilson a lot, but sometimes you have to show that it's more than just sports, more than just football, and you have to teach a lesson that it's like you're just not going to be able to get away with this twice, and so something has to be done. And I think that was a difficult decision for the Wilson administration, but I think it's the right choice as far as getting that message across that this will not be tolerated.
Yeah, nothing in this situation was easy. We had to make a hard decision too, because as you know, we do highlight videos of most of the events that we're at, and I was on deadline that night, as you may imagine. It's an overtime game, so
we're always on deadline.
It's tight there at the end of the Friday night, and get the handshake down. It's a good. What do you always say, Mike? It's a good place to put the final score.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to put it at the end of the last play or something.
we usually film the handshake line to some degree.
We write out.
I always call it C-roll, because B-roll is the before the game, and then my C-roll is what I write out.
It's our write out, and so I get that footage at this game. I put my camera down. I'm actually typing as this thing breaks, and I guess it was just out of habit that I picked my camera back up and just started filming. I didn't really think what I was going to do with that footage or what I was going to get on camera, but it just kind of happened that quick. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that everybody had to make a hard decision in this situation, and our hard decision was to not put that stuff up because it wasn't part of, like Tyler said earlier on in this segment, the best game in the Moore League this season.
Well, and JJ, an analogy that you used is that, everyone would like to see people running on the field during the Super Bowl, but they don't show it because they know if they do, more people are going to do it. That in some instances, a little bit of public advocacy is allowed by journalistic outlets to say, well, this isn't the kind of thing that we're putting on our website.
And we did not ignore it. We reported it in the story in the paper the next day. We also added extra reporting on the story in the paper the day after that. And then we broke the story exclusively of the aftermath of the whole thing, which was this forfeiture of the game against Compton. And the game against Compton brings up an interesting situation now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the standings box.
Don't do it to him, big fella.
Because what we've got here And Tyler, maybe you can help us out here. Just really quick run down the schedule that remains.
Well, numbers whiz.
What we've got, put charitably and politely, is a cluster.
Yes,
a cluster.
Indeed. We have a possibility right now, and granted, I think we need to throw this out there as well. It's going to take more than a few upsets for this to happen. More than a few games to go away that we don't think they're going to go, and we know local football pretty well.
It's going to have to go a specific way. A series of events will have to unfold.
Yeah.
But there's not that many weeks left.
So Poly is undefeated in league right now. Let's assume, and we're going to assume a lot in the next couple seconds, let's assume that Poly goes undefeated the rest of the way. That's 6 wins.
The question is more, do they give up a point or not? Yeah.
Fair enough. Lakewood, having lost to Poly, let's assume they beat Cabrillo this week and then finish the rest of the season with just that one loss in league.
And that has happened a good amount of times.
Multiple times.
So that's not
recently.
unrealistic
I
to
don't
assume
believe
that.
Not at all.
I don't believe Cabrillo has ever beaten Lakewood.
Behind them, no, Cabrillo has never beaten Lakewood in football.
So there you go.
Behind them is Milliken at 2 wins right now. Cabrillo at 2 wins right now. Wilson at 1 win because they forfeit. Compton at 2 wins right now.
Compton's in
and
the
Jordan
tie for third place.
and Jordan has yet to win a Moore League game. So that means Compton with 2 wins is tied for 3rd place in the Moore League.
Despite having been outscored on the field in league, what was it?
Almost 200 to nothing.
196 to 0.
Almost 200 to
And they're
nothing.
in
They
a
have yet
tie.
to win a game on the field.
Currently in a tie for a playoff spot.
That is a playoff spot. 3 teams from the Moore League, playoffs,
cray.
playoffs guaranteed.
Well,
a
then
little bit
anyone
cray.
over that would have to be an at-large. And I'm pretty confident we're never going to see that.
Pretty confident. But our point is this. Let's say Jordan upsets Milliken this week. Let's then go on to say that that Cabrillo loses to Wilson. Things like that. And I think you see where we're headed.
Cabrillo lost to Wilson last year.
There you go. So all of those things happen.
You have yet to say something that would be like
Jordan would
totally
then
preposterous.
have to beat Compton in the last week, the last game, and after that game, we would have 5 teams with 2 league wins, which would be a 5-way tie for the last automatic berth into the Pac-5 football division bracket.
And do we have enough envelopes for
and
that?
someone would have to go to Staples and buy a new box of envelopes
Yes.
for the envelope draw. Lisa Ulmer, the Moore League secretary, would have to do an extra trip, put it on
have
the
to turn
expense
that up.
account.
And I don't know what the protocol is for deciding between 5 teams.
It would be a 5-team envelope draw, I believe, the same way it's a 3-team envelope draw when it's 3.
Now, bear in
you would
mind,
think so.
Now, bear in
But
mind,
then,
I guarantee you that's not the
I
bull.
believe that the Moore League bylaws call for a tie between 3 or more teams to be decided by an envelope draw. But the thing that's worth pointing, and then that team has to go get stomped out by St. John Bosco. I mean, like, you know, for the right of being the 16th team in a 16-team playoff.
yeah, that's the best in the nation. Now, let's keep in mind, I mean, there's other scenarios here that could play out. I mean, Compton now has a way to get into that 3rd spot. If they beat Jordan, they win, you know, one of these games remaining on their schedule. But that scenario in which there's a 5-way tie would just be absolutely bananas. And then it opens the door that Compton could make the playoffs if this plays out without scoring a point in league.
Yeah.
Which is
That
crazy.
could be a thing.
And does that not show you the state of how crazy things are right now in the Moore League, in football? Is that scenario is a possibility this late into the season? Well, I mean, we'll see how it plays out, but this is the problem with all these forfeits and everything like that.
It's just not awesome right now.
It's not awesome.
It's very frustrating. You know, obviously we care so much about this league. JJ and I wrote a column that we discussed on this show about, you know, the sad
Well, we got
state
some
of the Moore League.
I mean, there was some grief given about that column that you guys
for sure.
got, and I that I answered for, and all that kind of stuff. I mean,
we all got a little bit of grief. I got way more. Hey, thanks for writing that. You guys are exactly dead on about it. But like, certainly, which is true. But
it's true that I was right. Yeah. Oh, okay.
we were all right. It's true that we were all right. But
Numbers don't lie, people.
that's what I said. I mean, all we did in the column was point out, look, 4 teams have had to forfeit or play an ineligible player, or 3. It's now 4 of the 7 teams. You know, I mean, every school basically has been touched by one of these scandals in some way or another. And it just sucks, man. It's really sad to see this happening right now, and you don't get the feeling like, but next week we start a new dawn. You know, it just feels very muddled this season, and it's not going to look any better for us in the playoffs. I have that feeling as well.
Well, the Moore League is Edward Norton right now in Fight Club and Tyler Durden is just holding his arm, and he's burnt, like the chemical burn on his hand, and he's like, listen, only once you hit bottom can you truly, come back and be yourself.
Can you find your way back up, yeah.
So if this is hitting bottom for the Moore League, I can't wait for next year?
I guess. So.
I guess.
This Tyler is 100% real. It's worth noting.
I have no idea how to start this.
Long Beach State 49. So we always say we, knock people down to build them back up again. To get away from what happened at the Wilson Milliken football game for a second, we wanted to talk about some really positive things that happened in high school sports at Wilson last week.
And I'd like to point out that we had this feature, Your Column, planned before all of this went down.
Yeah, I know. It required a little bit of editing because we had to acknowledge it. But basically, there's a saying around Wilson that we always love. They like that it's a great day to be a Bruin slogan quite a lot. Baseball coach Andy Hall, I think, has thrown that out after every big win that we've ever covered.
Yeah, definitely.
So last Thursday truly was a great day to be a Bruin. They won both against Poly, by the way, which an unnamed administrator from Wilson was quite pleased with, off the record. They beat Poly in tennis and they beat Poly in girls golf, both of which clinched Moore League titles in those sports. Both of those sports have now won 5 straight Moore League titles, and we just kind of wanted to throw that out there. I mean, I think that's interesting. You don't get beat writers for a girls golf team the way that you do for a football team, obviously. Right. But if you look across all of the sports, Wilson has actually won 377 Moore League titles, and Poly is actually number 2 with 299. I just thought that was really interesting. I mean, you obviously, again, you don't get 12,000 people at a swimming meet the way that you do at, Poly Lakewood football game a couple years ago, but Wilson's won a state record 40 consecutive boys swimming Moore League titles.
One more time, say that again.
40 straight, which is the craziest possible. It's the longest streak in any sport at any school in the state.
It's older than any of us.
Yes.
It's older than any of us.
By more than a decade.
Boom.
Or exactly a decade, I guess, in some of our cases.
Oh.
Sorry, Jake. And it's more than double the age of any of the kids who are going to compete to defend that title this year, obviously. So particularly funny in that regard, too. But just a great outing from Wilson last week, and I think that's worth noting. Girls golf, again, we do one highlight a year from girls golf, whereas every football team in the Moore League is going to get 2 or 3 videos at least.
Well, right, and I think with those sports, specifically like golf and tennis and swimming, it's difficult to say, why aren't you supporting all of those things? Why aren't you writing more about that? And it's difficult. It's more difficult to be a fan of girls golf or girls tennis than it is to be a football fan. Just in general, can't get off work to go walk the course at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday. That's more difficult than showing up on Friday at 7 p.m. every week.
Well, it's over the course of days also. It's not necessarily always just here's the 3 hours that this event is going to be taking place.
Right.
It's a time commitment. It's not set up for fandom necessarily.
Well, we know people who are diehard Wilson fans who go to every Wilson thing that they can go to. I've never seen those people at a tennis match because there's no scoreboard. There's no real seating. You know what I mean? They're not necessarily set up to be spectator sports, which is why they don't charge tickets for them.
And that's not to say that those people don't care about that, but that's why we're here.
Well,
that's why we write columns like this.
Not only do people care about it, but we care about it and consider those league championships just as significant in the historical thing. So Wilson's going to maintain that lead, it looks like, over Poly for a little while longer, 377 to 299. And go ahead and write that down, and you can start scoring after this fall's schedules are completed, I guess, and start seeing where people go. So that's 378 and 379 for Wilson with golf and tennis, and obviously we've still got some stuff to be decided in the rest of the fall sports.
Oh, nerd!
Oh, no. Sorry, I gotta watch that.
Oh no, Binky on the floor.
Sorry, buddy. Binky on the floor.
A friend of mine was over at my house on Monday night when the game was on. It was obviously very bad between the Giants and the Vikings.
You don't
and
say.
He said to me, God, this has got to be like the worst football game ever, right? And I said, well, I got to be honest with you. I've seen and covered and been around a lot better high school football games than this, right? I'm not saying that any high school team I covered could beat one of those teams. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying...
I mean, certainly not.
I'm saying that, it's just interesting that, the style of high school football, I've seen cleaner high school football games this year.
Better execution.
Better execution, better overall just control of a team.
Technique.
Everything considered. I've seen better high school football games than Monday Night Football.
It was rude.
In New York.
It was not a good game, and I mean, I think high school sports, one of the things I like about it is it's always a little more open to inventiveness and everything else. But yeah, I mean, like, you look at games, especially in our area, like the Poly Olu 2-0 2007 semifinal game, like, I've not been more, like, wow at an NFL game that the Niners weren't in the playoffs than that. I mean, that's about as crazy as you can get, and it was because both those defenses were good. I think there was a combined like 7 D1 guys on those offenses, so it's not like the offenses were bad. It's just, yeah, sometimes in this area you get great games like that.
Yeah, well, you get great games like that, but God, Josh Freeman just the worst he could have been, right? He could have been much worse. Who do you put that on, Tyler?
Statistically, he couldn't have been much worse. I mean, it's Josh Freeman's fault.
I put it on the coaches, man. That guy was not ready to play.
Yeah, so what? I mean, even if you don't know the plays, you can still see where your receiver is and not overthrow him by 3 yards.
But Josh Freeman's not in Peyton Manning's offense. He did not call 53 passes for himself.
Without question, but you can't complete like anywhere close to 50%.
We should look this up. I'm sure it is. That has to be the first time in NFL history someone threw the ball over 50 times and got neither a touchdown nor 200 yards of offense out of it.
It's tough.
It's absolutely tough.
Speaking of Peyton, you were at Game O' the Week, and it was pretty exciting.
Yeah, well, at least the biggest and most talked about game of the week and probably of the entire season. It was pretty awesome. I mean, what else can I really say? It didn't necessarily go the way I wanted it to go.
Right.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
None of you, actually, but
my.
why do we keep sending the crappiest NFL games to London?
I don't know.
Like what is Niners Jags gonna do for the sport of football in England?
The same thing Vikings Steelers did. Absolutely nothing.
But how big would it be to play like Pats Jets one time?
They don't understand, and when I say they, I mean the NFL. The NFL doesn't understand that the NBA didn't get successful by playing regular season games around the world. They brought great players from around the world and made them play in the NBA. If you want to turn, Gerard into the next NFL talent, then maybe you'd be onto something. But just by playing in someone's backyard isn't going to make that fan base a fan base.
And Kobe can go and play in an exhibition game in China, which Adrian Peterson cannot do. You know what I mean? It's just like basketball lends itself to things football can't do, and it seems like they're reaching to me when they send the 15th best game out of 16.
Oh, it's a massive reach. And then you've got these people talking about, maybe we get an expansion team in London.
Well, that's what the Jags allegedly want to be.
The worst idea ever.
Horrible, right?
And don't even get started on everything else. Just first think about travel logistics.
Oh, it's the worst. That's why you have to have your bye right after the trip so it doesn't ruin the rest of your entire season.
Can we talk about real football this week?
Absolute joke. Let's get it in. Let's do it.
Listen, I am extremely interested in this line. One line this week. A lot of the lines this week are tough to pick.
There's a lot of blurred lines, but this is the one that's
a lot of blurred lines. At Kansas City, the undefeated Kansas City Chiefs. Maybe the hottest team in the NFL right now are favored by only 7 points at home against the mighty Browns of Cleveland.
Okay, now I would...
What?
I would go with the Chefs in this one, but let me play devil's advocate. Because, Kansas City, a team built more on defense and managing the ball. The defense is great. They don't allow a lot of points. They don't score a lot of points. They played the hapless Houston Texans last week and only won by a point at home. So, they're not necessarily trending in the right direction. Cleveland has played better, but I don't really know who their quarterback's going to be.
Their quarterback is going to be Jason Campbell, dude.
Good, but it's one of those things where if you have a defensive team, their spread isn't necessarily always huge, but I'm sure they're going to dominate that game.
And you're right about that. The Chiefs certainly they're not the Broncos. They're not trying to hang 40 points on anyone, but I'd take the Jaguars at home against the Browns this week, personally. So to only see 7 points on the road against the last undefeated team in the NFL, I was kind of surprised by that.
Very surprised. The other spreads, like I said, are pretty bad. They've actually got San Francisco favored by 16.5 at Jacksonville. As a Niners fan, do you take that as disrespect?
No, because it's in London. It's a weird game, and I think that kind of factors into that. It's just it almost, to be honest with you, I can't remember the last time I was less nervous before a Niners game. And as we know in the NFL, sometimes that means like, oh, they're going to come out and beat you by 20 or whatever. But it just feels like an exhibition game as part of a business enterprise to have the Jaguars put people on the ground in England. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't even feel like a real football game to me.
It's weird. It's weird. It's been a weird weekend here in local Long Beach sports. So maybe this is the best time to get out of here. I don't know. We've got a big weekend coming up, as we always do. We've got football on Friday. We've got a bunch of football and basketball and baseball and soccer and all that stuff going on this weekend. We haven't even got water polo on Saturday, and it's a big one. So stay tuned to thegazettesports.com and also the Press Telegram newspaper for all of that local coverage. This has been another episode of Long Beach Sports Talk, coming at you every week, the only place to talk local sports, with your hosts as always. For Mike, for Vincent, for Tyler, for JJ,
World Star,
for everybody else involved in this show. Oh, hey, shout out to my boy from the Bay, Mikey Watts, for hitting us up with the new beats. Love it. We'll see you guys in the stands this weekend. Take care, y'all.
What's up?
Listen.
World Star. Is that too soon on the interrupting?